don't know if y'all caught it, but like this is like a, okay, yes, let's go. Kind of not final letter. We got a little bit out of order there with the snow and some scheduling and stuff like that. Snow, really the ice. But this is the last kind of letter we're going to look at in this series in Revelation to these 7 letters to churches. And what you've seen throughout all of them, Jesus has said kind of here's who he is to the churches, here's what he sees in their church, and most of the letters say, hey, here is what you are doing well, now remember this, or turn back. This one to the church in Philadelphia is one of the more encouraging, merely proclamation-based, hang-on type of letters. And so this ought to encourage us. Not saying that challenge is not there. I think the challenge will be not believing things that are coming at us. But this letter is really, I think, at the heart of it about inclusivity. Now I know inclusivity is like one of those trigger words for us, because it's like, well, what do you mean? I thought we got rid of that. It doesn't exist anymore. Or I thought we need to break it, right? So we immediately go cultural inclusivity is what we think of. And I think most of us understand, even I heard an interview about this idea of kind of the DEI changes and all this other stuff, and how it really hasn't done what either group has wanted it to. It just kind of like paused the whole conversation. But I think we all know this kind of cultural inclusivity trap that we feel we're in. And it's as light. The idea kind of, I think, starts with, that feeling as you get older when you're like, wait, that's not cool anymore? And it starts at this simple human desire for connection or acceptance. And, being a millennial, I am noticing, and not a very stylish millennial at that, not that I needed to alert you all of those things. But, it's like, okay, wait, skinny jeans are out? Like, that took me a while to adopt. Now they've been out for a long time. And then now, the things that were just awful in the early 2000s that we all wore are back in. Like bootcut jeans, right? And chains, silver chains. Like, if you were in 8th grade and you were a boy, you were like, I gotta get one of those chains. It's either like 3 6 Mafia has them or Eminem has them. Either way, this is a total cultural adoption of this chain thing. And then it went away for about 20, 30 years, and then now it's back. And all the middle school kids are wanting chains again. And I mean, crew socks. I mean, if you were a 90s kid, you had the best. Remember those tall crew socks that had like the double lines on them, or either just a hard red or hard blue? And now tall white crew socks are back in. And so it starts, this whole idea of inclusivity, it starts with this just natural, like, well, I want to belong. We all want to belong, right? We want to be included socially, relationally, culturally. Then it heads into this kind of weird cultural demand. Like, I think that's at its most innocent. Now it becomes this, we must be a people of inclusion. And the issue, regardless of what stances on everything is, this cultural kind of demand of what inclusivity and inclusion means is you must kind of accept someone based on their ideology, and you can't disagree with that ideology, but it's also like, as long as this tribe agrees that's the ideology to have. And I think we've wrecked it. I think no matter what it is, no matter what the issue is, this whole idea of the cultural inclusivity that we have held up as this huge, huge pillar of our current political, ideological, cultural moment we are terrified, I think socially terrified, of where we're going to land on every single issue. And I ran into this week. I follow this kind of finance guru guy. I think he probably has the best approach on money that I've found. I was in financial planning before ministry, and so it's like it's always been something I've been interested in. And he has a podcast and a Netflix show and a book, and I've even given the book to some of y'all. And what I see in him, what I really respect, is his ability to be very embracing and inclusive in a really good way to all sorts of different financially unhealthy mindsets and backgrounds. And so what he does is he knows, and he's not a Christian, but he basically kind of brings up this biblical point of like, money is a heart thing, not a numbers thing. And it's so helpful because it's like, yeah, he is just working through what's clear here. And shocker, it's what God's been saying all along. But he's very gracious. He's very embracing. He's able to challenge people and call them to kind of a better, healthy understanding. Now, if you follow him on Instagram, he's also very harsh and ugly towards people who disagree with him politically. And so there was this article that he referenced about this one kind of demographic group who supported Trump, and it was like this article. It's like, well, now they're starting to rethink this, and I don't care what you think about the article or the demographic group or whatever, but it's like, now these people are starting to kind of wonder. And so him being on the other side of the political aisle, you would maybe hope that it was like, oh, finally. But it was no mercy, these people shouldn't be allowed, and it was only judgment, condemnation, chastising, all this other stuff. And then what he'll do is, and this is, your heroes don't last very long, not that he's a hero of mine, but I think this is just how we are. But what he'll do is he'll clip people who are chastising him for chastising the person and all this other stuff. And like, I've spoken to this guy, like, face-to-face or on Zoom or whatever. And so I just said, hey man, like what I really appreciate about your take in finance is you have standards and you are so gracious when it comes to people who are disagreeing with you. And the hate that I see towards this other group is very discouraging, and I don't even think you enjoy this part. And so he messaged me back and forth a couple times, which is kind of the cool thing about social media is like a very prominent guy who has a television show can just interact with some nobody or whatever. And it's like, oh my gosh, so we went back and forth. Thankfully, he didn't blast me on his socials. But it brought up this idea that like, okay, so even the cultural idea of inclusion, and I think this is true across the board with all of us. Like there's a human problem where we decide who to include or not based on what we value and hold and based on our authority and power. What's able to be said, what's popular, what gains you points in your tribe, what loses you points in your tribe. And there's this human tendency to take this idea of, well, yeah, I'm embracing and inclusive of all those people, but if you disagree with this, you are a monster. And you are excluded now. That's the tension that our culture brings to inclusivity. Now, I said this passage is about inclusivity. It is not about that junk. This is about the biblical idea of inclusivity. And what I want to try to do is kind of prove to you all that you want it. You want to be biblically included and embraced. The pure idea of this belonging and connection and relational love and acceptance. We all want that. We are longing for that. And I think that is the thing that is being kind of tarnished here in this letter. I think it's being tarnished here in our culture today. That is what Christ is stepping into. The inconsistency of that often wrecks us. I think he is stepping into this and giving, I would say, the only voice that we should listen to in this idea of inclusion and embrace. And I'm going to say that word, inclusion and embrace. An author wrote a book called that. It's fantastic. I have a quote at the very, very end from it. But it's just a great way of thinking about this. But I'm going to try to convince you of that, and then really why Jesus is the only worthy voice of that, and then like what that means for us. Okay, so let me pray, and then we'll just dive right in to the text here. Lord, thank you that you, even without our knowledge, our permission, think that we could even give you permission. I know that the ego in me imagines that I have a say as to what you do. And you graciously put that aside and include me anyway. Lord, I would find all these problems with you embracing me, including me, and building a people, and what people that should look like, all these different pieces, and you gently but unchangingly put that down so that you can build a true people. And so I pray this morning that we would all find ourselves with the ability to become a part of that people, and then look around and notice who is being welcomed into that people, and have it shatter that ego and pride, and take up this idea of love and embrace. And so do that in us this morning through your Spirit. We pray in your name, Jesus. Amen. So, my main point this morning is that the world will try to tell you who you are. The world will try to tell you who you are, but Jesus alone is worthy of defining who you are and whose you are. Now, some of y'all are scribbling as fast as you can. The world will try to tell you who you are, but Jesus alone is worthy of defining who you are and whose you are. So let's take this first kind of section. The world will try to define you. That is what is happening with this church in Philadelphia. Jesus says, I know your works. And again, maybe some of you grew up in a very legalistic culture or religious environment. Maybe it was a very harsh home, and you hear that, I know your works, and you're bracing for impact. And I just want you to say, it's all positive here. For Jesus to see you doesn't have to bring shame and guilt and negative things with it. And so, will it reveal? Yes. Here, it is revealing and giving assurance. He says, I know your works. And he says, behold, I have set before you an open door, which no one is able to shut. I know that you have but little power, and yet you have kept my word and not denied my name. He says, behold, or look, pay attention. I will make those of the synagogue of Satan who say that they are Jews and are not, but lie. Behold, I will make them come and bow down before your feet. Okay, so what was happening then? And hopefully after each one of these letters, we've given you this little snippet. Me and the other preachers have given you this snippet of like the cultural dynamics of power in that first century. And your name, your identity, who you were socially, was incredibly important. And if y'all are starting to get tired of us saying that, then it's like you're starting to get it. You're starting to read it. You're starting to see it. But this idea that you have to do this thing, it's called mirror reading. Because it's not saying exactly what was happening, but you're going, okay, Jesus is responding to something, almost bouncing back at us like a mirror. And so what he says is this open door, this little power, and then everything in this passage is about bringing in, being a part of the people, being stabilized. And so what was going on was these Jews, the synagogue of Satan, right? It was these people who belonged to the synagogue that weren't actually worshipers of Yahweh, right? They were just false prophets, false worshipers, false people, they were slandering these Christians socially, saying who they were, who they weren't, declaring that they are not a people of God. They are not welcome they will not be welcome in the New Jerusalem. They will not have God's name on them. They are not a part of the people. They are not an accepted kind of religious body. That was extremely important. And so I've tried to come up with different ways of how this could connect. Another one of them, I think I probably mentioned it, is imagine what people thought of you was your credit score. And so it's okay, well, I want to buy a home. It's well, who does the public say you are? It's well, that's unfair, because this group of people, they're lying about me, saying that I shouldn't be, they're bringing me down, they're dragging me down. They've taken my 700 and they've dropped it to a 500. It's well, I'm sorry, you can't get credit. You can't get a mortgage with a 500 credit score. And so this idea of exclusion and slander was, you're not a part of our people. You're outside of that. And there were all these protections socially for people who were a part of a group or in a sanctioned religion or a part of a trade guild. And we hear all these temptations to be a part of something and a part of a people that would actually make life livable. I mean, it's well, your father can't get a job because he's a Christian. We're not allowed to go to the market at this time because we're Christians. And this group of powerful social Jews who aren't really, they're lying about us and they're spreading all these lies and things like that. And so some of the lies that were said about Christians is that they were incestuous. Where'd they come up with that? Right? I love my sisters of the congregation. Ha! Right? They were cannibals. They're eating the body of someone, of a human, and they're insisting that he was human and drinking blood. They sing about blood all the time. They're cannibals. Right? So there are these slanderous things about them that pushed them out. And so this is a real problem. And they don't have power. This whole, I know you don't have power. This is the inability to walk on the streets without being picked up by the cops type of social power. They had no ability to simply live quiet lives and worship God. And Jesus sees it. He knows it. And things would change. I mean, for a long time, the Christians had a lot of protection under kind of not messing with Rome as much. It was a very polytheistic culture, but you had to kind of worship the emperor, and the Jews kind of had a special protection. And for a long time, the Christians were a part of Jews. It's just like a sect of Judaism. Not a big difference, no big deal. By this time, everyone was starting to see the major differences, and the protected group calling out the unprotected group left them incredibly vulnerable. So not just the religious, social, economic environment, but a governmental one as well. And people going against Rome did not go well for any people, ever. That's the pressure that they are facing. And you even see this, who is included and who is not, even in the first century changed. Hey, well, as long as they're part of the Jews, they're fine. They're not a part of the Jews, that's not fine. I mean, we've seen shifts like that in our own culture over 50 years. So it's not that I can't believe those barbarous Romans. It's that's humans. And so these rules of inclusion and what is belonging change. And I think what's at stake is not just literal belonging. Because you fast forward today, and a lot of this financial merit is based, at least now, it wasn't true, right, for all peoples in America. You go back 50, 100 years, and people are still dealing with this thing. Well, it doesn't matter what my merit says. It's what culture I came from or what color my skin is. That's what's determining my ability to live an okay life. And we're still dealing with implications of that. So again, like, we're not super far away from this exact situation. But I think even if you have all those things covered, we're still worried about being exposed. Social currency and inclusion is huge today. I mean, one of the worst things you could be called today is what? I mean, there's not just one. I'm just saying, it makes you think of, I was like, somebody's like, there, okay, whatever. An Alabama fan. There, that's the only one that's safe because y'all know I'm so prejudiced as an Auburn fan. But anyway, I mean, but that like, we all kind of get a little tight because you could be accused of being something, and then, I mean, and we know that there are real economic implications. There are, like, people who've been canceled, all this other stuff, and now it's kind of like we see people being canceled for certain things, then they start podcasts, and they have to double down on why they were canceled, and, like, that's a lot of the currency of what we are doing, and I think now this huge problem with us is this desperation and fear of being exposed, I would say, as unlovable. I think that's where you follow the trace all the way down, and it's, well, I want to be known as cool. I want to be known as popular. I want to be known as up to date on what's right medically. I want to be known as being savvy technologically. I want to be known as being socially, kind of progressive and with it. I don't want to be racist. I don't want to be this. All of those things, you follow that trail down. I think I want to be accepted and loved by someone. I think that's at the bottom core of it, because if you are accepted and loved and secure in that, you can really put up with quite a bit, can't you? If you know you have someone who is going to embrace you, a people who are going to look out for you, someone who will never turn their back and leave you, you can put up with quite a bit. And I think that's really where it is. And I think in that fear is where we create tribes and associate with people, or disassociate, or follow or unfollow. Even that language, like, I'm going to follow this person. And then, you decide, my rule is like, whenever I see them take their account and then turn it into ads, I'm like, unfollow. You are excluded from my people. But that, that's what we do. And this is true even biologically. So there have been a lot of babies born in my sphere recently. And it's been like 5 years since we've had a baby. That sounded weird. I don't know why. We're not having any more. Okay, Mr. One baby. One baby and he's by himself this weekend, and his wife has that. He's sleeping just fine. Okay, sorry. But, the whole idea that, like, they've done all these studies, all this research, where it's like the whole skin-to-skin thing, like, biologically these babies need to be embraced, and they've, even speaking to babies, even before they're out in the world speaking to babies, there's been all this research. It's like development and connection and your neurological, the nervous system being able to regulate, like, it is so connected to being embraced, even from a biological level. And so, of course, that is true from a heart level, spiritual level. And so our makeup, our whole makeup, demands that we are included and embraced by someone or something or a people. That is what Jesus has noticed in this church, and he is calling out that these people are trying to tell them who they are. And I think that's true of us. The world will try to define us. Everything externally will try to define us. And it gets hard when we start believing those things and reinforce them. And so we need something outside of ourselves, more powerful than ourselves, more consistent than the world, And I think the only one that we can lean onto is God, specifically Jesus, who is all-knowing, all-powerful, outside of us, and completely consistent and unchanging and good. We wish our tribes were like that. And so Jesus, kind of my second point, Jesus is the only voice worthy of it. Now he starts this letter out, verse 7. Just like all the other letters, he mentions a characteristic of himself. He says, the words of the Holy One, True One, and who has the key of David, who opens and no one will shut, who shuts and no one will open. So, Holy One, the one separated, set apart. If you read Isaiah, you read this phrase, the Holy One of God, the Holy One of God, the Holy One of Israel, over and over and over. The Holy One. There's only one. Holy, perfect, set apart one. The True One. I don't know exactly what these people in Philadelphia were going through. But in the culture, in their time, I guarantee you that truth was important. And so Jesus says, I am the perfect, set apart one. I am also the true one. They're longing to hear from this one who is perfect and true. And then this specific one, the key of the house of David, who holds the key of David. It's from Isaiah 22, and it's in reference of this situation where there was like a false priest, false leader, and God removed them and installed a true one, and then kind of prophesies. It says, and I will place on his shoulder the key of the house of David. He shall open and none shall shut. He shall shut and none shall open. And I will fasten him like a peg in a secure place, and he will become a throne of honor to his father's house. And they will hang on him the whole honor of his father's house. Now we're getting bigger than a person, than just one guy named Hilkiah could hold. The offspring, place on him the whole honor of his father's house, the offspring of his father's house, and issue every small vessel. It's all the worship vestments and pieces, from cups to all the flagons. So now you see the entire honor, offspring, worship, all being on this one. The one who holds the key to the house of David. And then it says, in that day, declares the Lord of hosts, the peg that was fastened in a secure place will give way and will be cut down and fall, and the load that was on it will be cut off, for the Lord has spoken. Now that's pointing to like this perfect key holder who holds the weight of all things and then is going to be removed and cut off. And that's about Jesus. Right. They would have heard that. And what's so funny is like any true Jew would have heard that. And so Jesus is I think, throwing a little dig there. Not vindictively, but he's using this reference to the true people of God. And it's almost kind of in itself calling out these false people of God who say they're the true people of God but are lying. That's the Jesus who is coming, who is saying, this, here is my voice. You're listening to what they are saying. Here is my voice, the one who holds the key of David. That is the kingly line of God who is bringing about the kingdom of God. And so what does he do with that power and authority? He makes a couple promises. Verse 9, he says, I will make those of the synagogue of Satan, right, these false Jews, I will make them come and bow down before your feet. They think they're stronger, more authoritative, bigger than you. They will come bow at your feet. Why? Why would they come? What does this victory have? Like, what's the connector piece? Why would they come bow down? Why would these Philadelphian Christians have these false Jews bow at their feet? they will learn that I have loved you. Not, you were right the whole time. You're bigger and stronger than they are. You're actually my people and they're not. It's none of that. Almost in a shocking way, they're going to bow down before you because they will realize, me, the king, I have loved you. Past tense. So again, this whole inclusion, this embrace idea, Jesus even starts with your conquering begins in your received love from me. That is why you are embraced. That is why you are victorious in this life and forever. It begins in love. And then he keeps going. He says, because you have kept my word about patient endurance, you've held on to me. And that's not like when we read things like that, it's not well, due to the fact that you have held on, now I'm going to, in response, bless you. It's, you've held on and this is happening. It's a call to reality. Right? I know how often we moralize things and say, well, okay, I've got to do better. If I didn't patiently endure, then God wouldn't love me. That's not what he's saying. He is assuring them. He's giving them confidence. He's saying, you've held on. And I am going to keep you. I am going to keep you from this hour of trial that is going to come upon the whole world. That is coming, the trials and tribulations and things like that, I'm going to be the one who is guarding you, who's protecting you, who's holding on to you during that. As things continue to get harder, as things continue to pull away from me, as the world deteriorates, I'm going to shield you, guard you, protect you. And he keeps going, but shifts the tense. Verse 11. So again, it's I will make, I will keep, I will make. And then he says, I am coming. We're supposed to kind of have this like little pause there. Right? As we're reading future promise, future promise, future promise, current declaration. I am coming soon. So hang on. Hold fast so that no one will take your crown. They already have a crown. He's not saying, hold on so that someday you're going to earn your crown by how hard you work. He's saying, hang on so that nobody can take this from you. What's already yours. This is this climax pivot. They have conquered because of his love. And they've held on. And so they will gain these things. And so if we believe, again, that Jesus is the authority, he holds the key to the house of David, he is the Holy One and True One, that he is going to make these things true. Okay, so what does that mean for us? Like, what does that translate to? If we're like, okay, I believe Jesus is the one saying this, that he has the authority and power to say this, that his voice is the only one who's worthy of saying this. Now, what is he saying about me? What is Jesus trying to tell these Philadelphian Christians? And so that's the final kind of point, is that Jesus tells us who we are and whose we are. That is what he's trying to get into the heads of these Christians who are just trying to hang on. And he brings up this one picture that he uses as a metaphor. Verse 12, it says, the one who conquers, I will make him a pillar in the temple of God. Now that's kind of weird, I think. It would have been weird for the Jews to hear as well. Because the temple is where God's presence is. and they built the temple. And so what Jesus is now saying, he's going to make you a pillar of that temple. And just look at what he is saying inside of this. Because you are a pillar. I mean, first, what does that mean? Like, you are locked into the presence of the temple. You can't get away from the temple if you're a part of it. You can't be excluded from the temple if you're a part of the temple. You can't be outside the people of God if you're a part of the dwelling place of God. Temple was synonymous with God's dwelling place and where he was. I mean, it's the same thing of saying, hey, you're a part of my living room. You're a piece of my bed. That's how close you are going to be. The slander was they were not a part of the people of God. They're not going to be welcomed into the city. They're not going to go into God's presence. They're not going to be able to approach the temple. Jesus is saying, you're a part of the temple if you're in me. You're that close. So this place, this presence, it pointed not just to this kind of relational connection and presence with God, that's certainly true, but it also this permanence. A handful of times he's saying, look, I'm going to open and no one will shut the door for me. You imagine the city, this old city of David, this big gate. Jesus is standing there. He's saying, I have the keys to this. I'm the Holy One, true one. I've got the key. Like, he is the cosmic bouncer who is in charge of who gets in or out. That's not to suggest he's sitting there checking your ID kind of thing, but nobody's able to shut that gate. He is the ripped bro that is bigger than anybody around. He's saying, I'm the one who decides who comes in and goes, not these false Jews. Don't listen to their voice to tell you who gets to get close to me, who is a part of me and my people. And so this presence, in verse 12, he continues, never shall he go out of it. And then he doubles down with a name. So not just this presence as a pillar, but permanence. And then I will write on him the name of my God. And the name of the city of my God, the New Jerusalem, which comes down from my God out of heaven, and my own new name. I mean, it's like your resume is starting to get to the dreaded, like, more than one page after that, because Jesus keeps just adding accolades on top. I'm going to write the name of my God, Jesus says. I'm going to write the name of the city, the New Jerusalem. And again, it's coming down from heaven, not like we float up like spirits up to heaven, right? It's coming down here. And he says, and my new name, this whole idea of having a name. He's saying, you're going to get my credit score. You're going to be viewed socially at the top because I have loved you as high as you could possibly go. You will have the king, the holder of the keys to the city, pronouncing upon you that you are a part of it. So don't listen to their BS. It's kind of the Marshall version. It is the king pronouncing this permanent identity and relational connection and presence with God that will not be taken out, because the one who holds all the power and authority has fixed you as a part of the presence of God and inscribed his own name on you. And so that's who you are. That's whose you are. And imagine if you lived like that. I think where this hits us is between these two voices. The voice of Jesus and declaring who we are as a part of him, and then the voice of all the world out there. And just three quick ways. And just imagine if we actually let this land to make us secure, to have us hold on, to tell us that we are actually loved, I think we wouldn't need to posture so much. Like, we don't need to win the slander war. People will say untrue things about you all the time. And if you're anything like me, at least half of it or more is coming from in here or in here. I'm probably the biggest slanderer against what God says for my own heart and soul and psyche than anyone else. We don't need to win that war. We don't need to point out others. We don't need to put others down. We don't need to contrive why we're a little better than the next person. We don't need to do all this social posturing. We don't need to identify with groups or not identify with groups or make sure we change our Instagram background or never change our Instagram background. Like, we don't need to buy into all that stuff because our posture isn't defined of what all this out here says. Our standing is defined by God. We don't have to pander. We don't have to pander to people. I mean, all of us virtue signal. All of us. And we may not do it like in a very overt way, but I mean, there's no way that we can get out of this water of cancel culture and tribalism and all this stuff without kind of being like, well, what do you think about that? And just throwing little things out to kind of signal that we're a part of the good team, not the bad team. And if you don't think you do it, you're probably the chief offender. Like, that's bad news if you're like, oh, not me, but we're just trying to make sure we're not excluded. We want to be embraced, we want to be loved, we want to be included, and we're trying to signal that you shouldn't exclude me. I don't need to be the leader of the parade, but I'm a part of it. And then finally, we don't have to hide. If we believed what Jesus said was true about us because we are in him, we would never need to hide who we really are. And if that isn't scaring you right now, then you're not even coming up to that reality. There is a reason why we hide. And it's because when we take a look in and we see all the nastiness, that even in God's mercy, he lets us see just a little bit. Imagine someone who saw all of it. All of it. All your past mistakes. All your current awful condemnations of others. All the things you think and tell about yourself that God does not see you as in Christ anymore. Imagine if someone saw all of it and still said, you're a part of me. And nobody's going to shut that door. You are with me. You are loved by me. That the freedom we would feel, I mean, just physically, not just in our spirit and in emotions. I mean, the freedom we would feel to just say, this is me. I don't need to look 10 years younger. I don't need to look more competent than I am. I don't need to have everyone like me. I don't need to have a chip on my shoulder. I can just be accepted because I am accepted. The freedom that would come would shock people who knew you. It would be shocking. If we did it as a group, it would be shocking. There would have to be a reason why we would live like that. It would freak people out. And then we could answer, well, because I'm defined by Jesus. That's who I am. The whole world is going to try to define me, but I know who I am because of what Jesus says about me. And he has the keys, and he told me he's never going to shut it on me. There's a long quote, and I'll kind of close with this quote right here. And this is as this lands on us, the power of doing this out here in the world so that we can experience it more. It, I think, is so well summarized in this idea of including and embracing because of who we are. This is Miroslav Volf, and he was a part of the kind of like Serbian Bosnian genocide, and that's his context, right? So he's got cred here. He says, forgiveness flounders because I exclude the enemy from the community of humans even as I exclude myself from the community of sinners. But no one can be in the presence of God, of the crucified Messiah, for long without overcoming this double exclusion, without transposing the enemy from the sphere of the monstrous into the sphere of shared humanity, and herself, humanity, from the sphere of proud, or in him or herself, from the sphere of proud innocence into the sphere of common sinfulness. When one knows, as the cross demonstrates, that the torturer will not eternally triumph over the victim, one is free to rediscover that person's humanity and imitate God's love for him. And when one knows, as the cross demonstrates, that God's love is greater than all sin, one is free to see oneself in the light of God's justice and so rediscover one's own sinfulness. And so I know that's like whoa, that's a big... Once we understand that it is not the world that defines us and everyone around us, and it is God, we could never exclude someone. Because we ought to be excluded. Imagine the freedom of living life like that. That is not warm, fuzzy spirituality. That's not, it's gonna be okay. It's not, God is love, love wins, love it. It is the King Jesus is declaring something about his people. And if you belong to him, you are clear. That is how it is bought. The freedom is purchased by Jesus at the cross. It is this unburdened yoke, slavery that has been broken, judgment and fear is wiped away because we listen to what Jesus says about us. And it's that we are loved and that he will make us a pillar of the temple of God. The world is going to try to tell you who you are. But Jesus alone is worthy of defining who you are and whose you